So good afternoon. I'd like to personally thank you on behalf of my colleagues and I to Mr. Pat Cardullo and Mr. Jamie Turner for having us here today in order to be your training and consulting service. So we've set up this meeting and split it in about 4 ways in which we think some of these competencies might be able to help you in mitigating some of the issues you guys have been facing. So the first two being communication and self-awareness from Mr. Pat, and then persuasion and power and politics from Mr. Turner. So for the first competence being communication from Mr. Pat, we set it up in which we have a problem identification analysis and then a set of recommendations. So the first one we notice is that there is a bit of a insufficient verbal and nonverbal communication, which leads to a negative professional relationship between Jamie and Pat. So the first one that we saw was that Cardullo didn't praise Turner in private or public, so he would either publicly say something that he was worried about or either privately praise him. So we probably want to try to open a more effective and open relationship in which the communication flows more easily. Cardullo also didn't introduce Turner to anyone in the company and had a strong belief that managers should focus on their own area. And Cardullo didn't talk to anyone after the new pricing scheme. So with this, it also has an underlying anger issue that we've noticed from the papers we received, in which Cardullo seemed to be a little bit impatient when people had different perspectives. So some of the solutions that we have come up with is establishing regular conferences, which enhances the communication between the employees and the employer. We could have an anger management course in which it could resolve some of the temper issues, having welcome parties, anonymous feedbacks, and establishing a CRM platform. The second competence is self-awareness. So what we picked up on is that Mr. Cardullo insisted on having the price scheme, even though other members of the company were claiming that it might not have worked or that we could do something different. So and the second one being that Mr. Cardullo also refused to adopt the advanced management tool. So why this ties in with self-awareness is that because as a manager, as Mr. Pat is, we would suggest just being a little bit more aware of what people around you are suggesting. So this again ties in with the communication, which is just having open communication, keeping an open mind when hearing employees' opinions. So the alternative solutions we have is asking feedback at work. So again, having maybe regular meetings or something like that to be able to hear from them. Also engaging with clients by soliciting feedback. So having the client pitch in might be really helpful as well to see what the end product is. Also in the long term would be probably taking personality and psychometric tests and talking with professionals. So this would be again in the long term, which is improving the overall relationship that Mr. Cardullo has with people around him. And also setting regular meetings with mentors and probably maybe in the long term attending professional conferences in the industry. So the second competence we want Jamie Turner to work on is persuasion. We noticed that sometimes instead of trying to persuade Mr. Cardullo here, Mr. Jamie would instead just be silent and accept the other plans passively. Turner failed to persuade his boss again and lacked the confidence to let his boss accept his proposal or even hear his ideas in the first place. Some of the solutions we might suggest for this would be to be a little bit persistent. So if Mr. Pat disagrees with the plan or doesn't want to hear it, Turner could be a little bit more persuasive and just to be a little bit more persistent. So maybe try reaching out to him in different ways or different times in the day, set up a meeting, things like this. Secondly, could be talking with professionals. So either another coach or someone who's dealt with Mr. Pat before. And thirdly, what other clients have found really helpful is maybe recording themselves while persuading, because persuading is a skill that you definitely do have to practice and it takes some self-confidence. So either asking a friend to role play or even filming yourself of practicing how you're going to say it. So with Mr. Jamie Turner, we wanted to talk about the competence of power in politics, in which Jamie suggested that he had misgivings about his decision to join MLI. He wanted more autonomy, but also found himself thinking that he had a little bit too much of it. Turner also felt that maybe he was the one supplying more of the leadership instead of Cardullo. So with this, some of the alternate solutions we could think of is having, again, a clear line and open communication so that we can manage a manager's expectations and also what the employees feel like they should be doing or not doing. Again, having hosting whole company events in which you have an open environment for employees and top level senior managers to speak to in an informal setting. Again, with this, also delegating we found was really important. So if Turner feels that he might be doing a little bit too much or that he's expected to do too much, he can delegate some of these roles into some other employees to be able to better manage his job. So this concludes our first coaching and training session. Thank you, Mr. Jamie Turner and Pat Cardullo, for letting us present. We hope you found these solutions helpful in mitigating your problem. Do not hesitate to contact either myself or my colleagues if you have any questions or if you would like to set up a second training session. Thank you.